You're listening to Trek FM.
Hello and welcome to From There to Here, Trek FM's 50th anniversary rewatch of all 729 Star Trek adventures from beginning to end. I'm one of your co-hosts for today, Lee Hutchison, and I'm joined by Suzanne from To The Journey. This is your first time here. How are you?
I'm doing well, Lee. Glad to be here. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. I'm ready to go through an interesting batch of Voyager episodes. We've got what could be described as some of the best Voyager, maybe some of the worst too, so I think it's going to be an interesting 4 days here.
Oh, without a doubt.
So we'll fire into our first episode, Riddles. Tuvok is zapped by an invisible alien and then begins to find his emotions start to flourish through as Neelix and the crew try to help him get back to being the Vulcan he once was, but Neelix isn't so sure if that's a good idea. So, what did you think of Riddles?
Riddles I thought was interesting. It was more of a Neelix Tuvok road trip, kind of buddy movie-ish. But then there were hints of Flowers from Algernon in there. It was very odd, to say the least, to see Tuvok sort of losing who Tuvok is. But I really enjoyed Neelix stepping in to help him out.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty decent episode. It's actually one I don't think I've watched ever since it first aired on TV all those years ago. I think it's a pretty good episode, and I was surprised how much I enjoyed it when I switched it on. I thought, when you start these things, you think, right, come on, let's get a good one out of the way, so it's going to be an easy couple of days viewing. And with this, I was kind of surprised by how much I enjoyed it. I liked the Neelix and Tuvok relationship, and that it took Tuvok being emotional to say how he felt about Neelix, and I thought that was really well conveyed. And I think there's a nice little kind of mystery plot kind of running along. It's not the most exciting plot in the world, but it kind of holds your attention for 40 odd minutes. And the one part that kind of a bit annoyed me about this episode was I felt that the crew were putting a bit too much pressure on Tuvok to, come on Tuvok, you've got to tell us what you know. Like, I felt that wasn't Janeway. That didn't feel like Janeway at all. That I refuse to believe she would have been applying that much pressure on Tuvok to reveal what kind of frequency he was discovering or what have you. So it was a bit odd, that aspect. I don't know how you felt about it.
It was a bit forced, like they were trying to force him to get better quicker instead of allowing him to actually physically heal and get on with things. But I really liked the reveal of the frequency in the frosting. And anytime you can use frosting to solve a problem, I want to be there.
I was licking my fingers when I got to see that cake. I almost had this image of just like them going, oh my god, that's like the frequency solved, and then there's just someone in the background just filling their face with the cake and everything.
Just
like
running
that.
their finger across the top, and the frequency's gone.
Yeah, as I say, it's kind of an episode that doesn't leave the greatest of impressions long term, but I think in terms of a little character episode, I think there's little to fault about this. That I don't know, like we're kind of coming to the end really of From There to Here. So any kind of thoughts and last minute things I've got to start squeezing into these batches. Like for me, I don't have an issue with Neelix that most people have. I think he can be a little irritating at points. I think some of his decision making can be a bit frustrating. But as a character, I've never really bought into the hate for Neelix, and he's a character I don't particularly have any problems with whatsoever.
No, I don't have any problems with Neelix. He reminds me of a few people I've known throughout my life who are very annoying, but still, you have to deal with them.
Yeah, he's just like a kind of run-of-the-mill alien character on Star Trek. He's not one of these people that I ever think, some of the main Neelix episodes weren't always the greatest, but like as a supporting character, he's perfectly fine. And the Tuvok Neelix relationship, while it's not up there with some of the greatest buddy relationships in Star Trek, it's a perfectly kind of fine one. And I think it's interesting along the way. I find little to fault between the two of them.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I could totally see myself in the Tuvok position with Neelix constantly annoying him. I identify more with Tuvok in this relationship.
Yeah, I think we'd all probably be realistic. Here I am saying, I don't mind Neelix, but I imagine if I was having to be on a spaceship with him for 75 years, I'd maybe be kind of probably err on the side of Tuvok. So, is there anything else you want to say about Riddles before we dive into our next episode?
One thing that interests me is Tuvok took such an interest in cooking during this episode, and I have to wonder, was any of that left over from Tuvix?
Yeah, I reckon there could be a canon excuse made for that. Yeah, sure. I don't see why not.
Making excuses.
Yeah, I think some of these things that I think, yeah, I'd probably go along with that. If someone said that, yeah, sure. I mean, okay. I'd probably, in the grand scheme of things, I doubt it because we see next to no consequences of the Tuvix episodes ever again in Voyager. He's never mentioned that. We don't see Neelix acting a bit more logical and a bit more calm and in peace with himself. So maybe I think it would be an interesting piece of canon. I'm sure I'd probably, from my point of view, from my kind of line of work, I would probably say it's something maybe sensory for him, that sometimes people that have gone through a bit of a traumatic experience find that kind of playing with food, cooking can be a really good way to kind of get your help with your mental health. So I'm going to say, with my professional hat on, that's my reason. With my that could be a good enough reason. As a Star Trek fan, I'll go along with your reasoning.
Okay, it's going to stick in my head canon though.
There you go.
It's part of Tuvix left over.
Yeah, you can do an episode on To the Journey of that. I think
yes,
that could
we
be
can.
An interesting one. So we'll go into our next episode, Dragon's Teeth. Voyager ends up in a slipstream wormhole and ends up having to land on a planet where they just happen to wake up an entire civilization after centuries. However, the alien civilization, the Vadvar, somehow aren't quite what they seem. So, what did you make of Dragon's Teeth?
Dragon's Teeth, it didn't make much sense to me. I thought Seven would have more forethought than to just wake up some random dude from a stasis pod. So from that point on, I was just like, really? How is any of this happening?
That's the problem. It's just that way it's kind of done. It's like, oh, I accidentally did it. It's almost like I can come out. I say it with as much conviction if I eat my girlfriend's biscuits and she's at the house. Oh, I just happened to have done it. I'm so sorry.
I didn't know it was yours.
For me, this episode is so frustrating that I think this episode's a pretty good pilot to a kind of new series of adventures and a villain for Star Trek Voyager to face. Kind of similar to probably, I was watch this and I think, oh, they're maybe going to do what they did with the Hirogen. They're going to have like a few episodes in a row, kind of prey, hunters, killing game. And I'm thinking, oh, here we go, the Vadvar. And it's never to be seen or heard from again, apart from you see one of their ships in the void next season. You've got it so hyped up that, oh my god, it feels like there's a threat. There's a real tension running through the episode. It's building up. There's a lot going on. And it's never to be seen from and dealt from again, that you've got this potential new threat to the galaxy and that's it.
Reset
it's
button.
Over and done with. Yeah. It's ridiculous that we'll bump into the Borg probably about 20 times before the end of the season, but we'll never hear from this race again. And, it feels like they're building up to something that we're going to see from them again. And, it's a bit ridiculous because I know their original intention was to do a 2-hour episode. Then they pulled it back to an hour episode. And then kind of on the home stretch, they went, oh, we kind of wanted to do a 2-hour episode. So there's like an extra 30-40 minutes of written material out there that they could have used in potentially another episode. So it's a really bizarre case of an interesting episode in isolation that could have been something more that's just kind of been left at the station, and that's just disappointing.
It is disappointing because you saw that there was potential in there for it to become something more than what it did, and it was just a letdown. And then I have issue with Janeway's refusal to equip the Vadvar fighters with photon torpedoes because it's against regulations. Waking up all those people that she woke up was against regulations.
I wouldn't. I personally would fall down on that. I don't think it's wise, but I can understand the reasoning behind it. We saw it in TNG where they woke up the Earth individuals in the neutral zone. I don't think that's really probably against Federation rules, but like equipping weapons most certainly is. That kind of arming a militia is just totally frowned upon. The one part for me that would frustrate me more so about Janeway than those aspects was like, it just seems that kind of the whole situation of them coming out of the slipstream and the aliens were like, well, we're going to have to race your kind of computer about this aspect of space. And then the fact that it seemed to escalate so quickly that Jim was like, oh, no, you can't do that. You can't board our ship. Right, run away. And like they go land on the planet and it like then it kicks up the thing like, now we're going to go fight our way out. As opposed to, you just use diplomacy. That's kind of what you guys are about. And it seemed to have exploded too quickly, this whole situation, that I'm sure it could have been talked out, and I felt Janeway's actions was more so to just get them on the planet than like as a kind of tactical reason or a genuine frustration. It just slightly annoys me that was the approach, but hey, it's an interesting episode, but it could have been something more. The Vaadwaur are a pretty kind of schemy, nice change of pace from kind of some of the villains we've seen recently in Voyager, and a nice change from kind of the Borg as the one and only threat. So yeah, just a bit disappointing we were never to see them again.
It was disappointing, especially just the potential that they had, and they didn't look like the regular alien of the week, just something a little different. Yeah,
they're pretty cool, they're pretty schemy, it had it all there. I'm sure some of the episodes we're going to kind of fire into over this block, I would have easily preferred to see a Vaadwaur episode or a kind of continuation of that plot, but that's probably a discussion for another day.
Yes, it is.
So, Susanna, if people wanted to get in touch with you, where can people find you on the internet and Trek FM?
On the internet, you can find me on Twitter. My handle is at KJaneway8. That's K, the letter K, Janeway, and the number 8. Then you can find me on Trek FM, talking about To the Journey. You can also find me on Facebook in the Babel Conference, lurking about. Where can people find you, Lee?
Yeah, you can find me on the Earl Grey podcast, talking Star Trek The Next Generation. You can find me on my own other podcast, Filibuster, on the Nerd Party Network. And you can find me on Twitter at Lee_Nostromo and at Star Trek VHS. So hopefully you'll join us tomorrow for another exciting pair of Voyager episodes. We'll see you on the other side.